Hi guys. I am delighted to be bringing you this very, very informative chat I'm going to have with Frederike all about Riesling. International Riesling Day is coming up on the 12th of March. So I am a wonderful guinea pig to be tasting Rieslings here on a Tuesday afternoon with the lovely Frederike from Kenderman Wines. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks
Um,
for having me.
yeah, and thank you for giving us your time. And I'm thrilled. Anybody who follows me on my page knows that Riesling is my death row wine for sure. I just adore German Riesling, and I have done for many, many years. So I'm thrilled to be involved in this conversation with you. So I'd love if you could just tell us a little bit about you yourself, Frederike, and of course the winery that you're involved in, and where is it in Germany, and what type of wines are you making?
So my name is Frederike. I'm a winemaker at Reh Kendermann Weinkellerei in Bingen in Germany. It's located right by the Rhine River in the Rheinhessen area. And we really mostly do export wines, a lot to the UK, a lot to Ireland as well. And we're really talking about Riesling. Riesling is one of our most important varieties. We have almost in every of our ranges, you'd find a Riesling in all kinds of styles, dry, fruity, sweet, cover everything. And yeah.
Okay, great. So I did a little question box on my Instagram page yesterday, and from an Irish perspective, we're still a little bit slow to catch on the perils and the amazingness of Riesling. Um, and I know, from a German perspective, how important it is in the country. Um, could you just maybe give me an idea of, certainly for you guys in the Kenderman winery, what's the most popular style of Riesling you're making at the moment? You said you can do fruity or dry, and I know that a lot of people are just maybe still under the impression that they're sweet, but they're not.
So yeah, sweet Riesling actually is a really small market for us. It's mostly dry and off dry. With well, Riesling is the really the most important grape variety in Germany. It makes up almost a quarter of the total acreage of wine, and it's really the kind of grape variety Germany is known for. So we really try to reflect the German style of Riesling, and yeah, bring it out into the world from our winery. So really, the most popular style is dry, off dry, with a hint of fruit. And also in our winehouse range, which is our personal, let's say, premium range, where we also invest the most work, also where the winemakers are really involved in making from the grape over to pressing and finally the determination of style. We really take care of our Rieslings. We have two, one we're going to taste today,
And it's gorgeous.
from Rheinhessen and from Mosel as well.
Yeah, okay. And I guess sometimes I find when people ask me, "Oh, what's Riesling like?" It's such a wonderful grape. It's so multi-layered, and it really depends on what soils and climate it's grown in. Is that correct?
Yeah, Riesling really is very versatile. You can really make everything out of a Riesling. You could make it dry, crisp, fruity, and if you let it ripen for a longer time, you can put it even in an oak barrel. So it gets this really nice ripe notes. You can make, in Germany we call it Auslese or Trockenbeerenauslese, where you really leave the grapes to ripen for a very long time. So you get very, very high sugar levels. And these wines can age up to 30 years, no problem. So it's really a very versatile variety.
Exactly. And as you say, there are very few other commercial white grapes like that that have that kind of aging capability about them. So I think it's great to have the conversation around how much more of a modern approach the Riesling is today, certainly probably for your international market. Before we get started on the wines, I'd love just a little bit of insight of German wine drinkers. What are you drinking? What's very popular in the wine bars? What like to have your kind of snacks with them as well.
Riesling, I'd say, is quite popular, but also Pinot Gris. Pinot Blanc is really, really coming. Also, kind of, it really depends where you are. When you go to a wine bar in a wine region, you'd have all kind of wines from different wineries. And they all kind of try to get more adventurous with their styles as well. They try orange wines, say, they really kind of gaining popularity, as well as nature wines, low sulfur levels, all these kind of things. But that's only really in the wine regions, because if you grow up in a wine region, you kind of grow up with the wine as well. But if you go to all the, I'd say the rest of the country, Riesling is kind of not as popular as I'd say Pinot Gris, because the lower acidity and sometimes a little bit sweeter. So it really varies, but it's nice to see that also in general wine gains popularity and young people are really getting more into wine, even if they're not from a wine region.
Yeah.
So that's nice to see. So drier wines really start to develop also.
And would you have any kind of indication of, because people love numbers and stats, what percentage of your Rieslings are now dry, do you think? Like
at our winery?
Yeah.
Or in total at the winery? That's a difficult question. I'd
would
say about more
definitely dry, or do you think maybe a little bit more?
Say again?
Would you be producing maybe 50% completely dry Riesling, maybe a little bit more?
I'd say it's about 50%.
Okay.
Because we produce some that have some residual sugar just to make them a little bit more approachable. And also a very, very dry Riesling can easily get very, very, very sour sometimes. So a little bit of residual sugar really does it well. So you get this nice balance of sweetness and acidity.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And actually, I think you'll be able to explain that to us, the residual sugar, when we taste the wines.
Yeah.
Because for everybody at home, it is really important to talk about the residual sugar, because it balances with the acidity. And as you say, if you have a Riesling that's bone dry, often they can be almost too sherbety or too zesty, without that touch of residual sugar. So we'll start on the wines, if you're happy with that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So Frederike, you were saying we'll start on the Black Tower first. And I guess in Ireland we had Black Tower was big in the 80s, certainly the 70s and the 80s, and it was part of that style of wine, the Liefremilch style, with the extra sugar. Am I correct?
Yeah, it was kind of that time where there's this saying that says German Riesling was cheap and sweet, and we're really trying to get away from that, because it was a nice, easily approachable style of wine. But now that the whole kind of wine community is really trying to not move away, but kind of show that there's more to Riesling and in general to wine than just sugar and just easy drinking, without being overly complex and overly acidic.
Mm-hmm. And I think it has, like, I think we'll all agree, a far more kind of modern look to it. Certainly, on the label here, it has the grape variety in front of the label, which is always extremely helpful for people in shops and stuff like that. What a lot of people do tend to ask me, and actually something I want to point out to everybody at home, it's 9.5 in alcohol, because a lot of people are becoming really far more concerned about their units, etc. But it's not a German requirement or a German law to have the not the sugar level on it, but the classification for it being dry or off dry, or there's no real way of the customer understanding this in just from the shop shelf.
Do you mean there is a legal requirement to put anything on the label, as in terms of, is it dry, is it sweet?
Yeah.
Well, usually you do, because that's really the only thing that indicates to the customer what they're going to get. Because if you're in front of a supermarket shelf, it's really hard to determine what kind of wine you'll get. So I think it's not a law, you don't have to do it, but I think everybody mostly does it because it really helps.
Yeah, and it's lovely the way you have a little kind of tasting note and then food suggestions. So yeah, we'll have a little taste now. If you want to describe the flavors that you're smelling and tasting.
I think this one is a really well. I just because we have those nice sleeves on them with the flowers. They change. They
Wow.
change with the season. So this one is. It looks a little bit different than your bottle, but I think it also makes it really pretty.
Yeah,
Just
gorgeous. Yeah.
yeah, we have them in all kind of styles. Sometimes we have when it's Christmas time, there's Christmas sleeves and all kind of different ones. Just all also matching the seasons and the wines, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this one really fits because I think this Riesling really has a nice, very flowery bouquet. It really smells of, I think, peach, lime, lemongrass.
Yeah.
Really, really, it's fit for the spring now. I don't know how the weather is in Ireland, but right here it's really grey and not so nice. But if it was proper spring weather, then this would be fitting.
Yeah, well, it's very, very sunny today, which is not normal.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, when I'm doing a recording, it has to be like blasting in sunshine, but I won't complain. I won't complain.
So talking about residual sugar, this obviously has a generous amount of residual sugar. It's around 20 grams.
Okay. Yeah.
But I really think it balances nicely with the acidity. So it's a really nice wine to just have on a porch in the sun in spring
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
some nice snacks and just a couple of friends. I think it's a perfect wine for that.
It's actually it makes it kind of really sippable. And like has a lovely mouthfeel, and that's obviously from the extra sugar levels. And I think that people at home tend to sometimes get a little bit scared when we say the word sugar. However, as I often remind people, it finishes really clean, and really crisp and quite dry. So the sugar is more just to balance with that acid, and give that lovely kind of extra plumpness to it. What would you normally pair with this type of black tower?
I think with this wine, it's not, for me personally, it's not the wine that I would have with a big meal. It's rather something that you have with some finger food, some snacks, maybe some tapas if you really like that Mediterranean style. Because I think it's a nice opening
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah. And as well, for anyone who is maybe, looking to try this, what I would say is it's a lovely kind of spring summery wine, very sippable, doesn't necessarily shout out that it's a huge food wine, but really has a lovely finish to it, nice crisp finish. It's gorgeous. Really
And
nice.
also the sugar, I think, goes really well with the lower alcohol content because if it was higher in alcohol, say around 12, then it would really be heavier with the paired with the sugar. But because it has less alcohol, it goes quite nicely with the sugar level and the acidity as well, makes it light. So it's in general, you'd see a trend going to lower alcohol wines because people say, I'd rather have 2 glasses of wine, but if a wine has 12, 13% alcohol, say, it's not really what you want to do just, at a night with friends. So we see that trend coming, and I think it really goes well with this kind of style, at least.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think what's amazing about the low alcohol in this is that it's a natural low alcohol. It hasn't been fermented and then removed, which has a big difference to it. It's a naturally low alcohol wine. It's gorgeous. Really, really, really nice. Okay, so we'll move on to the Bend in the River. And I just want to show the label again. Really clean, really quite modern. They have a little note on the back. Again, food suggestions, and the alcohol on this is like 10%. Wow, it's
Yes, also.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's also natural alcohol. So we don't do, at least in our wine ranges, we don't do anything with removed alcohol. We just stop fermentation. And that's really the I would say the best way because you don't remove any of the aromas. The wine really is wine and not any processed in any other way than fermentation. So
Yeah, exactly. And like you can get the low alcohol wines that are maybe 5 or 6%, but they've been fully fermented and it's been taken out, and then they have maybe a bit of sweet juice added back in, and it's a completely different. These are so natural.
it's a completely different product.
Yeah. It's also vegan. It says it on the front of the bottle. I love the label on it. It's really, really cool. And as I always say, for people who are in the shop and they're maybe busy and maybe they're chatting or they're distracted, you know, and a good label kind of helps to bring your attention back in, and it kind of gives that real clean, crisp feel to it.
And it's really in the design, I think, and also you can see the bend. That's where Bingen, the city where our winery is located. The River Rhine bends right where we are, and the landscape really changes from vineyards and nice slopes to really steep slopes and forest. That's where the Mittelrhein starts. So yeah, really, it's not only a nice label, but it also reflects
exactly
our location.
of where your winery is based. Would you say that maybe around this region is probably the best region for Riesling in terms of the slate and those soil types?
Well, where we are in Bingen, we mostly have more in the Rheinhessen area. It's not really yet the kind of stony soil. It's mostly I lost the word right now. Yeah, it's mostly lighter soils. It's not really at that stony. That's where we're gonna go with the Shiefer Steillage. But it's a really good area because we have a lot of nice exposure on the slopes, and also the climate is very fitting for Riesling. It's not yet too warm. The soil doesn't get too warm, so we can produce this nice light style of wine.
Okay. So already, it's a little bit more. I get like tangerines and mandarins, and really,
it's definitely more crisp.
Yeah,
and much. I think it feels really. Also, if you smell it, it also feels much more crisp than the Black Tower.
Yeah,
because this has a very low residual sugar content.
Okay.
The acidity is a bit higher on this one, so it's really like a nice. It really reminds me of lemon and lime.
Yeah, it's like that kind of super zesty citrus burst. It's absolutely gorgeous. Very lean, very crisp, light. I could really imagine this like with like a lovely goat's cheese. It has that profile
That's
to
what
it.
I was thinking about as well. Yeah.
Yeah, like that kind of tangy but creamy. It's really like
also
sorry, go on, yeah.
Sorry. Also, I think with some grilled vegetables in summer, I feel if I drink this wine, I think of a summer barbecue.
Yeah.
So
and
it's really nice and crisp.
Summer barbecue, definitely. It has that really, like, I don't want to say Sauvignon Blanc because it's a totally different, but for those at home to kind of categorize flavors and stuff, it has those flavors of very citrusy, green, lemon, limes, but actually has a little bit more,
zest. It feels very juicy.
Yeah. Like super juicy. Really, really lovely. Lovely. So what would be the sugars in this then?
I have the analysis here actually. It's 7.5 in sugar.
Okay.
And 8.9 in acidity. So if just one thing about this wine, for people who might be a little bit sensitive to acidity, this might be a little much. So in comparison to the Black Tower that was much lower in acidity, that would be a good choice. Whereas this one, you can feel the acidity, but also if you're sensitive, maybe watch out for that.
Okay. So then, I mean, certainly, let's say you open it up on a Friday night and maybe you go, oh, gosh, it's tart. Even just a little nibble of something really, really helps. A little hunk of cheese or a little bit of, I brought out some salmon here. I tasted it with the smoked salmon earlier on, and it was actually gorgeous.
Yeah, I really had with a nice smoked salmon tartare with some avocado maybe to make it creamy. That's a really nice pair. Yeah, I've had it with salmon as well actually. So
it was delicious. I had a little moment.
Perfect match.
I came on the call, so I was like, and actually, when I did a call with Alison last summer, and I was asking her about food recommendations, and she told me to pair with smoked trout, and I was like, oh, I don't know, I'm not that keen on smoked trout, But I went off and I bought the smoked trout. I was a very good student, and I tasted it with the next wine. And honestly, it was just, it was heaven. It was like a taste
Yeah, I
explosion.
can
I was
imagine.
delighted with myself. I really was. So, guys, that's the Bend in the River. It would be a lot crisper, a lot zestier than the Black Tower. But a really, really well made, very stunning wine, very fresh, and again, very summery. And the finish is very dry, very crisp. Lovely. Okay, so we'll move on to the Shiefer Steillage. So I'll just show you the bottle here again. So again, another really lovely label. And I will this here, maybe, I don't know if you can make it out, but that's slate, isn't it?
Yeah, that's slate.
Yeah. Has a little blurb on the back. Again, the wine is vegan, and the alcohol is 11.5%. These are all available on Dunn's, as I was saying, but what a really lovely, classy, very stylish label. So yeah, if you'd like to talk us through that, would be brilliant.
So as you mentioned, we have the slate on the label, which really is, this wine is from the Mosel region, which is obviously quite famous. And the really main dominant part of the soil is the slate. And also the word Steillage, which is, I think, is a really classical German word. It sounds like Schiefer Steillage.
I love it. I love it.
It means it's a really, really steep slope.
Yeah.
And that paired with the slate really, it catches the heat and it slowly releases the heat of the day throughout the night, and that's why you get really, really ripe grapes. Also, the Shiefer really gives this nice minerality to the wine, and the complex structure that a lot of Mosel wines have. And I really think when you smell it, this is typical Mosel style wine.
Honestly, the aromas on this are just so intriguing, and it's just the type of wine where you just sit down and go, oh wow, it immediately catches your attention, because it's not your everyday typical, citrus fruits, etc. There's layers there, and you, as a wine novice, you may not know what they are, but you certainly understand that there's almost like an orange peel to it, little touch of an oily hint to it. It's really, really gorgeous.
Yeah, and that oily hint that you mentioned, that's really this typical smell that you get with Mosel wines, because that's exactly what a very ripe Riesling grape gives to the wine, those ripe aromas. And this is also a wine that you could easily keep for 2-3 years, and it wouldn't lose any of its flavors.
So am I right in saying this has a bit of a weightier palate to it?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I would have with food. I think it's a food wine.
Yeah. Okay. And interestingly enough, I do get the presence of sugars. However, it's still it's like sherbet. It finishes crisp, clean. It's just, oh my God, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Obviously these are my favorite wines. What would be the sugars in this Shiefer Steillage?
This is around 20 grams of residual sugar as well.
Oh.
So it's in the off-dry range as well, but it's again paired with the acidity and with the complex aromas that the terroir adds to the wine. I think it's not overly sweet. It's very well balanced, and it also has a really, really nice body.
Yeah. Listen, I think you've hit the nail on the head, because us as Irish consumers, we go, okay, I'll take the German Riesling, but I only want to dry. But if anyone can remember from this chat, sometimes dry may be a little bit too zesty and too, fresh. The likes of this that is off dry technically and has 20 grams sugar, it's still an incredibly crisp and aromatic and zesty wine. It's not like somebody would be bringing it home and going, wow, that's just too sweet for my liking. It's not at all. If people could remember that the natural sugars are there to balance with the natural acids. It's nothing is confected or nothing is added or anything like that, you know. Um, I wonder, could you maybe give me some idea then, if you were saying that this, you know, might last for another 2 to 3 years, where would you see the flavors going then?
I think the oiliness would come out even more as Riesling ages. It sometimes get we call it a petrol note, but it's not. Don't think of but the this oily kind of smell that would get more. But the acidity would stay the same probably. It would get a little bit softer as wine ages. The acidity gets a little bit more subdued, not as crisp and in the front anymore. But I think it would really, really get a nice rounded
Yeah.
sort of mouthfeel to it
Yeah.
without losing any of it. It would lose some of the youthfulness, some of the fruit, but the main aromas would still be there and it would age quite nicely, I think.
Yeah. And as you say, and again, for everyone at home, very often we're maybe having Japanese or Thai or even a Chinese, and they're big, bold flavors. And half the time I might just go, I'm not going to bother having a glass of wine. But I really think a wine like this has enough sugars and acidity and like power of flavor that it would probably pair well with those styles of foods, the Asians. Do you think?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Also, it's not high in alcohol. Um, it has 11.5.
Yeah.
So that's also alcohol is always a good indicator to pair with food because um, high alcohol enhances spiciness, for example. So if you want
Ah,
to cook a spicy meal, you should maybe not have a wine with it that has 13.5% of alcohol because it would only enhance it. Maybe have something with it that's a bit more towards sweet and like this, very balanced with the acidities. That really gives it a nice uh, overall flavor. But also you could have this, I think, with a really nice cheese board
yeah.
with some Swiss cheese or some camembert or something like that. That would really go well because it kind of cuts through this fatty thickness, but also it has enough flavor and power of its own to keep up with the cheeses.
Yeah. No, they're absolutely fantastic wines. And like for the price, certainly in Ireland, we are um our government charges a lot of money for tax
Mm.
and VAT, and we're not a wine producing country. And you know, there are pros and cons to all of that. We get a big selection, however, we do tend to pay above and beyond. But I find with German wines, the value for money that comes from German wines is exceptional. And you know, for the price that these are at, certainly in Dunn's, the quality that you're getting at, the amount of flavors, the finish, the adaptability with food, I just think that they're magnificent wines. So huge, you know, kudos to you guys at Ken. Before we do finish, I just want to ask you, because it's great to see so many female winemakers now. I was in Spain, you know, a number of times last summer, and I would say 90% of the winemakers were female. Now, I don't know if that was a coincidence, but it's brilliant. How is that looking in Germany? You know, is there many female winemakers, or are you one of few?
I think it's increasing. I studied viticulture and enology, and I think we were around 70% boys and 30% girls. But I feel like it's really going up. Also, most people who go into the wine business it used to be like this. You'd have a winery at home, and then you'd go to school, become a winemaker, and go back to your own winery. But now, especially with wineries such as the Kenderman, they're looking for people who don't have their own wineries.
Yeah,
And I think more and more young women and girls go into winemaking because it used to be a very male dominated industry. Because also if in school and when you study it, it's a lot of what making wine is a lot of
very
physical
hard.
labor. You're outside in the vineyards, you're in the cellar lifting heavy things and everything. So it used to be in the heads of people that it's for men, it's not for girls. But I think it changes, and it's really nice to see those changes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's International Women's Day coming up, I think, on the 8th of March.
Yeah, I think it's the 8th.
Yeah. So thank you for flying the flag for women in the wine industry, because, it's wonderful to see it more and more prevalent. But huge thanks for giving us your time today. I know that you are super busy and you're obviously making wonderful wines, and we as customers are the lucky ones that we get the chance to drink them and drink them with friends and consume them with lovely food. Okay.
And that's what a good wine is made for. You drink it
Yeah.
with friends, you enjoy it, you have a nice time. That's what we make the
Absolutely.
wine for. So
Yeah. And I really I implore people to go and try these wines and just be genuinely, really, really impressed. So thank you so much. Okay. Thank you very much. And
thank
hopefully
you.
our paths will cross soon.
A pro wine probably.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Bye, Frederica.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Thank you.